Video, we're going to talk about the Paycheck Protection Program and the forgiveness calculations. As we've done some of these presentations on the PPP program, everyone has really been asking, how does the forgiveness calculation work, and will I get everything forgiven? And the calculations are not well defined. Right now, the SBA has not issued any guidance on the forgiveness calculations. In the guidance that they published on April 3rd, 2020, they did say that they will give guidance at a later date. And as we go through some of these calculations and definitions of terms here in this video, you're going to see that, and you're going to ask yourself the question, what do some of these definitions mean? And there isn't really any clear definition. So what we've done is we've tried to figure out what the intent of the law is and how it's worded and define terms in a particular way consistent with the intention of the law. So first of all, let's talk about the allowable cost. This was documented and published in the April 3rd guidance by the SBA. And you can use the proceeds for payroll costs, group health care, mortgage interest, rent, utilities. You can also pay interest on prior debt prior to February 15th, and also in refinancing an EIDL loan that was for $10,000. Now, the stages of the forgiveness process, if we look at the four stages of the PPP process, you'll see that we're in the shutdown stage right now, and there are really what we consider two really key stages here that you have to pay attention to, and they are the 8-week spending period and the documentation period. After you submit all that documentation, the lenders have 60 days for the forgiveness evaluation period. That's where they will take your documentation, review it, and decide whether or how much is forgiven in the whole process. Obviously, the 8-week spending period is very well defined, and the documentation period is not well defined. My guess is that they would likely give you 30 or 60 days from the end of the 8-week spending period to complete the documentation process. Things we want to remember. Right now, there is really no start date other than knowing that it starts at the beginning of the 8-week spending period. Now, the 8-week spending period technically begins on the date of the loan origination. And we don't really know what the loan origination is. That could be the date that the loan is approved by the SBA, or it could be the date that the proceeds are received. I think in theory they intended those dates to be either the same day or one day apart. But at the beginning of the loan process, there have been some delays between approval and funding. And if there is a lag time of 3, 5, or 7 days, we're really not too sure exactly how those days are, which one is going to be the measurement date for the beginning of the 8-week process. We believe it will be the date that things are funded. But for right now, we will consider, as we talk about this in this video, we'll talk about everything being the same day so we can have consistency on how everything is applied. First of all, we want to talk about the idea that there are 3 calculations that are limiting the forgiveness of debt. The first one is a 75% payroll test. That one limits the overall amount that can be forgiven. The other 2 is a reduction on number of employees and a reduction in salaries. Those just reduce the amount forgiven. But the overall limitation is the first test. The first test, which is the 75% payroll test, basically defines that payroll costs need to be at least 75% of the amount forgiven. Again, this coincides with their intention that they are giving you these loans and they want the proceeds to be used to put people back to work. So allocating at least 75% to payroll costs is the goal of the program. So to back into what is the maximum forgiveness based on that test, you can divide the payroll cost by 75% and come up with the maximum forgiveness amount. So in our example here, we take the 200,000, assuming that that is the total payroll cost. You divide it by 75%, and you will get $266,000 as the maximum loan forgiveness. The next test is a reduction in loan forgiveness based on the number of employees. This has to do with either the term headcount or FTEs or full-time equivalents. And as far as the definitions of headcount and full-time equivalents, there really isn't one in the literature as of yet. And my guess is that they would, as long as you have a consistent application of these terms, your calculations in this area are likely going to be close to what the final regs will actually be. So in this example, we're trying to take the average FTEs for the 8-week measurement period, and we're going to divide that by option 1 or option 2, which is the FTEs at 2 different periods. February 15th of 19 to June 30th, 19, or January 1st through February 29th, 2020. Right now they are giving you the option to choose which one you prefer and which is the better measurement. Now, obviously, what you would prefer to have is for the denominator is the lowest number, which will yield the best result. So we will. What we'll do is we'll show you the computations in our simulation tool. But for this purpose, let's assume our $200,000 payroll for the 8-week measurement period, and let's assume that we have 42 people, headcount or FTEs, during the 8-week measurement period, and 45 in a prior period, whether it be option 1 or option 2. And what it does is it reduces the allowable payroll cost down to $186,667. If we take the total payroll of $200,000 and compare it to the max payroll allowable, we have a reduction of $13,000. The last test in reduction in loan forgiveness is based on individual salaries. Now, what they indicate is if you go through the 8-week measurement period and you have an employee who did not earn at least 75% of what their wages were in 2019, then that person's payroll cannot be used as an allowable cost. So, given that definition, in our simulation tool, we chose an approach to measure things weekly. So when we talk, if you look at the graph to the side, you're going to see each employee's name, and you're going to see original weekly payroll. That's their payroll for the 2019 period, what it was per week. The new weekly payroll, and if it got reduced more than 25% in the highlighted in orange areas there, you can see a few employees have been reduced. Then the allowable payroll in the far right column is down to 0. Even though they were actually paid some payroll, it's not their payroll is not allowed as a part of the payroll process because you have reduced their wages by more than 25%. So before we get into the simulation tool, I just wanted to mention that you need to realize that the simulation tool is based on what we know right now. And we also built a planning and monitoring tool which will allow you to see if you're compliant and simulate how you're trending on this. And you have to realize that this is just a starting point. The SBA has not issued final regulations on these calculations and definitions, and whatever they issue could substantially change these calculations. And we'll change these in our modeling tool as they're issued, but as of right now, they have not been defined. So we've looked into the law, tried to build the definitions based on what the intentions of the law are, and that's the tool that we have at this point in time. Look out for watch our next video on the actual simulation tool. Thanks.